It's not the drug of satisfaction, it's the drug of anticipation. Sadness is a sensation of being stuck. Mental health diagnosis is dynamic. I'm just addicted to this. Yeah, sure. Yeah, there's a stigma because people don't want to seem weak. They don't want to seem like that. People want to be strong so that people invest in them, because you want bases covered. Okay, cool. I need a job. I need a relationship. I need security.
In what contexts? Where are you experiencing pleasure as you've just described that?
People want to be strong so that people invest in them.
What is it that I have to do in order to experience that thing?
It's difficult to understand where the pelvic floor is.
Nina, thank you so much for doing this today. Thank you for giving us your time. I know you have so much value to offer. So I'm really excited to have you here. Thanks, you.
Thanks, Taz. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I walk past the studio almost every day. I'm such a mall rat, but not like in a cool way. I'm just always at like Clicks or Discam.
Oh. Discam. Okay, let's not get into Discam.
Yeah.
Sure.
I know that everybody's got their Discam fantasy and that it's like this trap. I do Discam, but for some reason I like a small Clicks where I can hide and just like do medicine, like okay. I have like 2 medicine cabinets, but mostly with supplements in.
Okay.
Like I've got like my one small box with my actual meds in, and then emergency meds in case anything else happens, because I'm terrified of something happening and me not being prepared because I live alone. And, like if something happens, I can't like, if you have a tummy ache in the middle of the night, what are you going to do? Phone an ambulance? No, you're not going to phone an ambulance. You need like a Buscopan. So I try and make sure that I've got all the range of things that happen in the middle of the night, and then
prepared much.
And then all the vitamins and all the supplements, from your collagen to your omegas to your moringas to your things. And sometimes I forget to take them completely, but they're there.
There. Moringa, I started taking it recently. It's very overwhelming to me. I can't take it.
Yeah, it took me a long time to get into it at first as well. It like would actually make me sick.
Yes.
And I was like, and they also suggest that you have it on an empty stomach. So I couldn't take it. And also like when I first started drinking green tea in the morning, I can't drink green tea on an empty stomach. It makes me sick. So yeah, I've only recently started taking the moringa again. And yeah, what does it do to you?
So, okay, when I take it, I feel like I don't ingest it well. I feel sick, like almost nauseous.
Yes, me too.
But for the whole day.
Oh, really?
If I take it like in the morning, I don't really feel great for the whole day.
Maybe the way that we're taking it is wrong. Maybe we're supposed to like, because a lot of people like sprinkle it on their food.
Oh, yes. I was taking it in a smoothie.
I was taking it as a capsule,
and it was making you feel sick.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we need some advice. Maybe there's people that are moringa experts that can tell us.
Maybe it's too super food for us.
Yeah, or maybe we're taking too much too soon, because some of these things you have to sort of introduce into your diet.
Yeah, maybe it's that. I think initially I would say that was probably the thing. I was taking a few things and moringa in the same.
Yeah.
So I started pulling things out, and then I just realized actually this moringa, it's a lot for me.
Yeah.
But yes, I believe it's like such a superfood. I want to know about it.
Yeah.
Try reintroduce it.
I try and like do as much good to my body, because I do quite a lot of bad to my body as well,
like what?
Like I recently started smoking again. I was busy telling you offline, which was sort of obviously like a knee-jerk reaction to like quite a lot of personal stress and anguish and grief and stuff that was happening in my life as a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. If I'm having like something that's unbearably painful, I can't like have a glass of wine or smoke a joint or whatever it is that people do to like take the edge off. I can't even take like mind altering, like I can't take a Xan or anything like any of those kinds of meds that have like opioids or benzos or anything like that. So I have to genuinely just face everything that happens in my life head on all the time, and it requires a system, and I don't often use the system, and then I forget, and I'm like, why am I suffering? And then I'm like, oh, you're not using the tools that you learned to do this thing. And I started reading this morning. For some reason, I woke up at 5:30 this morning. I never wake up at 5:30. I'm a 10 a.m. kind of girl because I work late at night. As a comedian, sometimes I only get sleep at like 2, 3 in the morning because we work at night and the adrenaline is up high. And then by the time you like wind down and stuff, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. And then it's hard for me to be up early because I also need, if I don't get 7 hours sleep, I tweak. So anything less than 7 hours is very hard for me. If I get like 6.5 even, I start like feeling shivery and shaky, and it can affect my mood and all kinds of things. So I woke up at 5:30 this morning, and I've been meaning to read this book that I bought called The Molecule of More. And it was so helpful because I went through I'm going through like a bit of a roller coaster with this relationship that's, anyway, it's just a disaster. So it's sort of like, and me sort of like having to rein in my emotions the whole time. And it's exhausting having to like rein in your emotions. And I'm like, why am I having to do this? This is nonsense. Why am I reining in my emotions? I just want to feel what I want to feel, And it's taken so much energy from me. And then I made a decision last night that I'm just like actually going to step away from this thing, because if I can't be myself and my full self, and if you're not ready to accept me for my full self, then it's not right. Then the timing's not right. Then it's not right. So why must I pretend to be something I'm not in order to service a place where you're at, which is nonsense. So, and then I read these things this morning, was talking about dopamine in the brain being the drug of, it's not the drug of satisfaction, it's the drug of anticipation.
Anticipating that something good is going to happen.
Yes.
Okay.
So like waiting for this relationship to happen.
Okay.
When is it going to happen? When is he going to be ready? When is he going to message me?
So it's like, the anticipation more than the act
of the thing
that's happening. That's so interesting. Okay.
So I was like, oh, that was such a relief for me, going, oh, I'm just addicted to this.
Feeling. The anticipation.
Exactly. And if I was maybe not... and if it did come to fruition, then would I be unhappy? Or would I be dissatisfied?
Is it a letdown?
Yeah. So I was like, oh, okay. Well, so let me just go back to surrender and purpose and the things that make me feel. I don't want to be in the search of joy. I want to be in the search of peace and serenity. And that's what AA is all about. It's all about the search of serenity. And I'm like, oh, I haven't been doing the work, and I'm just looking for another drug. And I've just been looking for love as a drug. And I'm like, and what an unfair thing for me to expect of another human being to fulfill being that drug.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so now that I've relinquished myself of that pressure of that thing, and I've released that person from the responsibility of fulfilling that thing for me, great, fabulous,
It's so interesting because I really wanted to speak to you about relationships in relation to mental health.
Right.
But I firstly want to ask you, walk me through your journey with personal health, with mental health rather. And why have you gotten to this point now where you really want to share your own journey? What kind of took you to the point where you want to share it? How did you get to the point where you realized, oh, this is something that I'm dealing with, and moving through it, and then obviously getting to a point where you feel you have value to share with other people? Because I feel like a lot of times when we're in this dark space, you can really only think about yourself. You're not at the point where you feel you can maybe help other people.
Yeah, totally. I've had a lot of people in my immediate space in the last couple of months that have been really suffering, very close to me, that have been really suffering. And what happened was I actually ran out of capacity to help those people because I didn't have anything to give. And then actually I had to pull away completely, which I'm sure must have felt like betrayal to them. But how am I going to help you if I'm dead? You know what I mean? So I had to just pull back and cut off and just retract and just focus on myself again. And sure, I'm not a psychologist. I'm a person that experiences these things, whose job in life is to be a comedian. And being a comedian means that you articulate thoughts and then you share them on stage. And you share them on different stages and you test it with different people. And some people laugh and some people don't laugh. And then you're like, oh, okay, this generally makes all these different people laugh, right? Just so that's like a data analyst, you know, like comedians are basically just glorified data analysts. And what I'm realizing is articulation of like abstract things that aren't like, that don't necessarily formally exist in our like social zeitgeist is a very specific skill. You know, there was a stage where everyone was like, oh, comedians are all depressed. No, we're just the ones with the microphones. Everyone's depressed. And depressed. Depressed is also a word that's like thrown around because people often confuse sadness with depression.
What is the difference?
Well, sadness is the experience of doing the same thing over and over again without reaping any. Sadness is a sensation of being stuck.
Okay.
So say, for example, I really want a boyfriend. I really want this to work out. I really want a job. And you keep going for interviews, and you keep going for interviews, and you keep going for interviews, and nothing gives. You feel stuck and frustrated and sad because you feel like you can't change the sensation, this physiological sensation of sadness. Sadness is an emotion that we've attached to the sensation of being stuck, right? Depression is a physiological, also diagnosis of a long-term physiological affliction, which presents in different forms. Sometimes it's undersleeping, sometimes it's oversleeping, sometimes it's undereating, sometimes it's overeating. Those are the ways that the symptoms of depression present. Thank you. But if you look at the brain, it's due to lack of serotonin, you know, and I'm learning about the hormones in the brain at the moment with this book that I'm reading. But I'm not a psychiatrist and I'm not a psychologist, but I kind of feel like that would be the most basic way of explaining it. It's a chemical imbalance in your brain of depression, which is like a lack of serotonin. That's why they prescribe SSRIs, which are stands for something. But basically it fixes the serotonin imbalance in your brain. So, and that the sensation of feeling stuck can also live in that world, because you feel like you're stuck in this inability to feel joy, you know, and this inability to get out of this feeling of overwhelm, or you unable to process any information. You've got no motivation, you're lacking purpose. And so there's different ways. There's so many schools of thought, and there's so many methods and tools and ways that people approach this thing, you know. And there's like so many permutations of like offshoots of depression. So anxiety, or sometimes it's like a horse before the cart. Sometimes you have anxiety first, and then as a result of not addressing the anxiety, depression can present. Or sometimes if you've got ADHD and it has not been correctly diagnosed, and then that ADHD, which is attention deficit disorder, which is somebody that struggles to concentrate and is you know what, I'm learning about ADHD at the moment. It's actually so misunderstood.
What is the difference between ADD and ADHD?
Basically, it's all ADHD, but it's one is hypo and one is hyper. So one presents as somebody that can't sit still, and the other one presents as somebody that's constantly tired, or, you know, lost in thought, and you know, lethargic, etc. So what happened with me, it seems, because mental health diagnosis is dynamic. It's dynamic for a variety of reasons. It's dynamic because symptoms present differently. It's dynamic because we're learning. Like the medical science field is learning as simultaneously to as we're learning. Medicines are changing. The brain gets used to certain medication and then works its way around it. It's a very cunning instrument, the human brain. So it requires constant moderation and communication and like understanding and a very clear conversation with your psychiatrist. We'll get into the lack of psychiatrists at some other point. It's a very big issue. There are only 650 psychiatrists in the whole of South Africa. Of those 650, only 400 of them are in private practice. That means that there's only 200 psychiatrists servicing South Africa, a population of 59 million people, where mental health issues present in like 1 in 4 people.
And do you feel, I would say I know the answer to this, there is a stigma, right, around mental health or around putting your hand up and saying, I'm struggling with my mental health?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there's a stigma because people don't want to seem weak. They don't want to seem like that. People want to be strong so that people invest in them, you know, because you want bases covered. Okay, cool. I need a job. I need a relationship. I need security. So as soon as you are now putting your hand up and admitting a weakness to somebody that they might not be able to tell from the outside.
I would definitely agree with you. It's almost like if you go into an interview and as part of your interview, you're saying, sometimes I struggle with my mental health.
Yeah.
That's a really scary thing to do.
Yeah, because they're like, why must I pay you? You might just not pitch up for work for a few days.
But not saying it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And everyone at some point, I would say, struggles with their mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what's so amazing? So go back to the ADHD conversation. From what I understand now, that ADHD is no longer seen as a mental health condition. It is now... ADHD or people with ADHD are now classified as a different type of brain. So like an autistic brain or an ADHD brain, whereas like depression is seen as a mental health illness. But ADHD is not seen as an illness. It's seen as a way that a brain functions, and it's very different to a normal brain. So now what's amazing is I can actually say, you know what, so I'm ADHD, and this is why this is so valuable for your company, because actually that I can like conceptualize and see things in a completely different perspective to what you can, because my brain is wired differently, and the diversity of those kinds of thinking and that kind of thinking actually adds value. But if we're not having these conversations and we don't know this about these things, then we don't know. And then to go back to the depression thing, okay, so now you've revealed this thing that I am struggling with depression, or I'm struggling with my mental health. What I've discovered, due to the fact that more of us are having these conversations, I was in the middle of a campaign last year with a client, and I pushed back for a whole month, and I said, I'm so sorry, but I'm having a depressive episode and I actually cannot fulfill my obligation in this space. And you know what? They were so understanding. And, you know, like now, you know, a friend of mine, she would phone me and she's like, you know, I've got to go into this meeting now. And she's like a very powerful businesswoman. She's incredible. She's like, I just don't feel well. And like, I just want to have a cry in the car, and like, it's a bit too much. And I said, you know what, why don't you just message these people and say, listen, I'm having a bit of an episode. My mental health is taking strain. I just need like 10 minutes to collect myself in the car, and I'll be with you guys shortly. And she did that. And as a result, was met with so much compassion, so much empathy, so much understanding, because as soon as you reveal the devil, the demon, you name the demon and you show it and you demystify it, and everyone's like, oh yeah, the bogeyman or the boogeyman under the bed that you're scared of, don't worry, I've put the light on in the room. We were all scared of that thing, and it's okay. And once everybody can share that experience of, yeah, I've also experienced that, there's empathy, because we're all on different parts of the wave of that thing. You know, sometimes when you're weak, other people can be strong. Other times when you're strong and when other people are weak. But the sooner that we have, I hate that word stigma or destigmatization, but the sooner we start entering this into like our ordinary conversations, the easier it is for us to just make it easier to live with, because now we can hold space for each other we couldn't before. You know, people are suffering inside, but they don't have to be. They can And, you know, I speak to a lot of men in this industry. And the more I speak to men, I realize they don't know how to articulate anything that they're saying. They also think that they need to work out all their problems inside their head. I'm like, you know that it's like easier to sort your stuff out when you actually just say it out loud. Like, imagine trying to, this is so great, I'm actually going to use this, I just thought of this now. Imagine trying to pack all your clothes in your cupboard and like sort them out, like fold them and stuff, with your hands inside the cupboard doors closed, and you're blindfolded, and you have to like fold all your clothes and sort them out.
Did you just think of that now?
I just thought of that
now.
You
heard it here first.
You heard it here first, absolutely. So like that's what it's like trying to sort your thoughts out inside your head.
Makes sense.
You know?
So much sense.
Get it out. Like, you know, this person that... so stupid. I'm so in love with this person and they're just an idiot. Anyway, but I could see that this person struggles with this stuff. And then I was like, well, tell me what it is that you're struggling with. And he was like this, that, and a third. And as the words came out of his mouth, he's like, oh, actually, I feel better having said this stuff out loud.
Yeah.
I was like, yes. Am I allowed to swear on this thing?
Yes.
Okay. Like, yes, you fucking idiot.
You must be you.
Yeah. But thank you.
Don't censor yourself.
Yeah. So I wish men knew that they were allowed to just, it doesn't even mean say, I'm struggling with something. Just say what's on your mind. Share what's in your brain. You know, the responsibility of the world doesn't lie on your sole shoulders. How important do you think you are?
Yeah. I love what you're saying. I agree that it is an issue with men. I think in a way men need to be willing to embrace a bit more of their femininity. We all have our masculinity and femininity within us, but men feel they need to be a certain way to be masculine. If they can allow themselves to tap into that femininity, which is the more sharing, maybe sometimes they feel we overshare. And I found exactly what you have just articulated for myself when I'm in a dark space. I book a session with my facilitator. Within the first 5 minutes of me just explaining to him what I'm going through, it's like I feel this weight coming off me. You just feel lighter.
Yeah.
And then you can do the work.
Exactly, because now you know what you're talking about. Just like when you're trying to explain a project, or you're trying to like, oh, my stylist just walked past. When you're trying to...
She's like, what are you wearing?
When you're trying to... So this is also why I don't understand people that work in advertising, okay? So you work in advertising. You know that in order to try and figure out a client, we sit down and we talk about it. Now, why can't you do that with your brain?
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm so frustrated. So frustrated.
Okay, so how do people, because it's one thing to say it, just talk about it, just open up, okay? But there's obviously, I imagine, a bit of shame. Sometimes there's a bit of denial.
Sure.
So how do we train ourselves to open up and to talk about these things and not fear the judgment?
So, I mean, look, there's a lot of training that has to go into place. A lot of people need therapy. A lot of people need access to therapy. The border to entry to therapy is hard, especially when you don't have medical aid. It's a loop-de-loop-de-loop. I have a solution, and I'm going to offer it to you now. There is an app called Panda. You go onto Join Panda. I'm currently working with them because I got access to this, and I was like, oh, this is going to change people's lives all around the world, and with immediate effect. So essentially it's an app where you can, do you know what Clubhouse is, or Twitter Spaces? Do you know what those things are?
And I have gone on the Panda app as well.
Have you gone on the Panda app?
You recommended it,
cool.
and I had a look at it.
And how did you feel about, like, so let me just explain to the listener. Essentially it's an app where you can join different sessions. So there's different, they call it the forest, which is like the safe space where everybody goes and logs onto different sessions. So there can be sessions on men needing to talk out loud, shame, guilt loops, or understanding what depression is, whatever the case may be. There are always live sessions that are happening in the forest. But if you need to speak directly to a therapist, there are always therapists online, therapists and counselors that are always online on the app that you can speak to directly and immediately, in order for them to then push you into the correct place for you to get the specific type of help that you need. What's great about it is that it's anonymous, so you can give yourself a fake name or a lovely name. You can call yourself Moon Unit June Bug Starship whatever, and you know what, so because I'm busy working with the people on the app as well, I have suggested some changes that might need to be made. Some people don't like to talk out loud. They might like to type better, and even articulating yourself as you're typing is just as freeing. And for me,
I guess it's almost like journaling.
Sure.
You're getting it out of your head and onto
a something or onto a space. So, without just shortcuts absolutely everything. It shortcuts having to get an appointment. And once you're speaking to a therapist, then they can push you into the right direction. Of course, there is SADAG, which is the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, which is as well as Lifeline. These are toll-free hotlines, but I don't know if toll-free works on cell phones anymore. I actually don't know.
Good point.
But yeah, so you can phone those numbers to speak to an online therapist if you need to speak to someone on the phone, if that's your preferred method of communication or whatever. So there are all these immediate spaces that you can go to if it is a critical situation, okay? And not just critical, if you need regular conversations with that thing. And if you need, so a lot of the people that follow me on social media that have since started using the app are really into it and have started their own little groups and their own little sessions. And it's actually really quite powerful. I really like what's happening in that space. And it didn't require any more energy from me than what I could only give a certain amount. And what I did was just direct people in that space. And that was valuable enough. So that was also just like a great way for me to preserve energy, because I often overcommit to a lot of people and a lot of things because I want to help people, but I can't always.
Yeah. When you know someone, so aside from these apps, I think that Panda app is great. I love the way they've put it together. It's light. It feels light to use. I love that they use the forest. You can go there, like you said, whether it's something really urgent or you just want to actually maintain your mental health and work on it. So yeah, I think it's a great app. So I wanted to go back to what we touched on earlier in terms of relationships. I know.
Boring.
No, it's the best. She's like, okay, actually my time is up now. There's so much.
I haven't been in a serious, committed, monogamous, healthy relationship in 15 years.
What do you put that down to? Or that's by choice?
No, I put it down to insanity. I was either on drugs, or I was dealing with my mental health, or I was in such a position of low self-worth that I would settle for being a side chick, or, being somebody that someone is on again, off again with because they don't want to choose me, not being chosen, having low self-esteem, all of this kind of stuff, or being busy working and then only settling for physical relationships with a couple of people on a rotation for 5 years,
And do you feel like now you are in a good space to entertain the type of relationship that you want to have?
Well, even the point of me going, this is not something that I'm willing to put myself in a position for, is a big step. It's a huge step.
Yeah.
That on its own is a completely different narrative to what I've lived with before.
I guess that's a self-worth thing.
Totally.
Right?
Totally. A lot of work on my self-worth.
What has improved? What has most helped you to improve your self-worth?
So there's this great podcast called Expanded. There's a woman named Lacey Phillips, and she has this course called To Be Magnetic, which is really phenomenal, just about like, you know, changing the neuropaths in your brain and using like meditation and energetic understanding to just do like hypnotize yourself, essentially. Joe Dispenza is also somebody that you could go into if you're into like neuroplasticity. So basically like retraining your brain, reparenting yourself, working on that shadow stuff, and like just putting yourself in a position to change the way that you value yourself and stepping into your power. I'm using all these like zeitgeisty words, and they seem like catchy words, but go and research these words that I'm using: neuroplasticity, shadow work, all of these things. I mean, those are all conversations on their own. Those are all like 2-hour conversations on their own. But yes, I am I saw you smile at Lacey and at or to be magnetic and at Joe Dispenza. So like,
yeah. So no, To Be Magnetic, it's, shall we call it, an area that I'm interested in.
Good.
And that you can become a more magnetic person. Like some people label people as charismatic or magnetic, but you can become that person.
Yeah.
So I just love the concept of that.
Yeah.
And then with Joe Dispenza, I actually thought of him earlier when you were talking about these feelings and the anticipation and the dopamine, and I heard him speak about how we get addicted to certain emotions.
Yes.
This blew my mind. Even an emotion that we don't like feeling.
I'm addicted to jealousy, resentment, anger, frustration, like all of those kinds of things. And as I was recognizing, I was like, you know, I was even addicted to anxiety.
I think so many people are. There's that familiarity.
Yeah. The safety in the thing that you already know.
Yeah. You're like, oh, there's my anxiety. Okay, everything's fine because I'm anxious.
Yes, so that you create the chaos. Yeah. You look for the drama. Some people I know are addicted to drama. There was a stage where I think that I was as well, but I was actually surrounded by people that were addicted to drama. And then I was like, you know, those people where they're always like, oh, you know, and then this one is in hospital. And then like that have been like that, not like in a pandemic, but have always been like that. There's always someone around them that's sick, and someone around them that's in a hospital, and someone around them that's, you know, and I'm just like, oh, but you like this.
Yes. But what is that person getting out of that?
Who knows? Who knows? Not my shit. I don't care.
Or pity maybe, or
whatever.
Attention. I don't know.
Victim. I don't know. I'm just like, now I see it. It's so real to me. I'm like, oh, and I'm gone. I'm not going to come and play on that playground. There's worms in that sandpit. No.
So let's say you are actively working on your mental health. You're not in the best space in your mental health, but you want the relationship. I know some people put relationship on the back burner. They say, I'm working on me. Sometimes you don't want to do it that way. How do you?
Look, there's a few things. So at the moment, this is exactly what this person's saying to me, is like, I want to work on myself. And I'm just like, oh, fine, fucking go work on yourself, you stupid asshole.
But then I also have this theory, if you really want to be with someone, you're with them and then you work on things together.
Yeah, but I think this person needs space in their life. I genuinely think they do. And if I had any sort of grace or kindness or compassion,
which you do,
which I do, which is it's frustrating because I'm a very instant gratification kind of person. I just want to see them and lick his face. But I can't, because this person is actually not in a position to offer me anything. This person is empty. So I can totally understand that. However, I've spent this last time like really getting to know myself. I'm in a good space.
Like, I'm so ready.
And this person's not ready. And then I had to look at the universe and go, well, maybe this is not the thing then. And that's also okay. And then I was like, oh, wait. Then the stuff that I read this morning, I was like, well, maybe I think I'm ready, but I'm actually not. So there's two things that can happen. You know, if you get into a relationship with somebody when you're at a specific level of like understanding yourself, you're only going to be able to match with somebody that's on that same level of understanding. If you are on a higher level of like frequency, you're going to match with someone that's on a higher frequency. Those other people just become invisible. So there's a time, you know, you're like, why are married men always talking to me? And you're like, well, what are you attracting?
Yeah.
What are you accepting in terms of behavior? Like, what kind of behavior are you accepting? Like, are you letting this person actually talk to you like that? They would never talk to my friend like that. Why would they never talk to my friend like that? Because my friend closes her energy, does not even would never entertain a conversation like that. And you're like, oh, but so I actually have control of this conversation. I have control of this narrative. I'm not a victim to it. What bullshit is that? Anyway, so I've just been changing my mind about a lot of things, because I mean, this was my narrative, like, oh, I'm an entertainer, so everybody thinks that I'm like the spice of life and that I'm a flight risk, and that's why I like these powerful men who are like all like, you know, have everything sorted, and then they're looking for like spice in their life, then they come to me because they think that, you know, I'm just going to add. Actually, no, I'm not a flight risk. I'm actually a very structured, regimented, reliable, solid. Guys, if you're a comedian and you've bought a house, if the bank can trust me, I had to give them 3 years of financial statements of my company.
When did you buy your house?
The first one I bought in 2019.
The first one?
Well, then I sold it immediately and then bought another place. But I'm actually busy building a property portfolio.
Oh, wow. Investing.
Yeah. So, but yeah, there's so many things I can talk to you about. I'm tired.
Okay. All right. So I think you've shared a lot. I really love that you're just opening up the conversation. People see someone like you. Obviously, you are successful and you're willing to talk about this. You also struggle with these things. It's beautiful because we all do. And I think we always look at successful people and think they don't go through the same struggles, or they didn't start at a point and have worked to get to this.
Guys, I was homeless. I was sleeping on the floor of a drug dealer's apartment with like maybe 9 other people in a 1-bedroom apartment in Braamfontein, on the floor with no blanket, just the clothes on my back. You want to talk about coming from nothing? Let me tell you something.
What is the first thing, I'm wrapping up, but what is the first thing that someone should do when they feel they are either at rock bottom or they just actually feel hopeless and they don't know what that next step is? They don't even feel that they are worth the life that they might dream of.
You know, at that stage, obviously, when you got nothing, you don't even have money to go and see a therapist or anything like that. If you, and most people still always have access to a cell phone and information. At that time, it wasn't that. You had to go to an internet cafe to go and look stuff up. I found support groups. I found anything that was free that I could get help from. So what's amazing about AA, because a lot of the time when you get to like rock bottom, and maybe if you're not even an alcoholic, but there are so many other 12-step programs like Al-Anon, which is like being the partner or living with somebody that's an alcoholic, or sex and love addiction, which is like when you just go from relationship to relationship. It doesn't mean that you're like having sex in the pantry, or maybe if that's your thing, you know. So like sex and love addiction is a very interesting one. There's Overeaters Anonymous. There's Codependency Anonymous, which is very interesting. I just read an incredible book on codependency. And you know what's amazing about reading this book on codependency is that I realized that I'm no longer there. I was like, because that was the hardest thing for me to come out of all the addictions. Codependency was my biggest one. All my friendships were codependent. My relationship with my mother, codependent. You know, this pandemic has taught me, or has given me the greatest gift I could ever ask for, which is emotional sovereignty. And I don't require that from my mother. And we had such an incredibly codependent relationship. And maybe that's why I feel like I'm ready for a love relationship, because I don't feel like I need to get the emotional support from a partner.
It's something you're stepping into out of choice, not out of necessity.
Yeah. So, yeah, you know, as I say, like with regards to the relationship stuff, this is something we say in AA, anything that you put in front of your recovery, you will lose. So, yes, work on yourself first.
And then lastly, what does it mean for you to live a world-class life?
Choice.
The freedom of choice?
Yeah. The freedom of choice.
How do you get the freedom of choice?
The irony is you get the freedom of choice from making decisions. So when there was a time where I just didn't want to make decisions. So like, I want to get drunk. I don't know how I'm going to get drunk. I know someone's going to pay for it. And then someone has to rescue me at the end of this. So I would put myself in a position where I had to be rescued constantly. And why do you need to get rescued? Because you don't have a choice. So, but how did I get there to the first place? I made bad decisions. So yeah, decisions.
And choices. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Nina, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for exemplifying this thing. Thank you for being successful and also being vulnerable and taking everyone on your journey. I think it's so helpful and I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I don't know what you believe in spiritually, but you caught me on such a good day. If you caught me yesterday, I was a mess. I was cranky. I physically didn't feel well. I think I was coming down with something for the last couple of days, but I woke up actually physically feeling better today. My throat wasn't sore. I was like, oh my God, do I have corona? And then I realized, no, I just had sinus and I was quite tired. But I was like, yeah, I'm feeling physically great today. I'm like, I've got a lot of energy. I've got a lot of hope, feeling a lot of purpose. And that's another thing. If you're feeling very lost and you're feeling like you don't have any direction and you're feeling quite low, maybe just give yourself some time to think about what it is you want to, like what purpose you want to fulfill in this world. And just the idea of being able to chase that purpose is going to make you feel better.
I love that. Thanks again. Until next time.
Until next time. This was great. Thank you. Have a lovely day.
You too.
Bye.